Nigeria's housing deficit stands at about 17 million housing units, and now the recent launch of the Nigeria Mortgage Refinance Company has raised expectations that housing might finally be affordable for all Nigerians. How feasible is this? Our guest this week is the Chief Executive Officer of the company. Hello there, welcome to the program. I'm Gloria Umezuike. The beginning of a process that would increase opportunities for Nigerians to own homes at an affordable price is the introduction of the Nigeria Mortgage Refinance Company. The process will also involve the reinvigoration of mass housing initiatives, which will give the housing sector the necessary stimulus to start realizing its great potential. Of course, for the good of the country. Well, the focus of our interview this week is the new federal government policy on refinancing the housing sector. But first, let's listen to a report on the launching of the Nigeria Mortgage Refinance Company.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister.
Mortgage bankers from across the country, chief executives of mortgage institutions, captains of industry, beneficiaries and government officials gather to hear what the Jonathan administration has set out to do to bridge the funding gap of housing and promote the availability and affordability of good housing to Nigerians. The Minister of Finance decries a situation where Nigeria continues to lag behind, while other countries have tried to use housing to become economically vibrant.
To help kickstart the funding support, we successfully negotiated a $300 million financing agreement between the federal government and the International Development Association, the soft credit arm of the World Bank. This facility is at zero interest, 40-year tenor with 10 years of grace. $250 million of this will be disbursed to the NMRC in installments as Tier 2 capital based on performance indicators.
Let me assure all Nigerians that with the continued guidance of Mr. President and his traditional leadership, the requisite enabling environment for the gradual but speedy delivery of decent and affordable housing and sustainable urbanization is being increasingly provided for us to harness the potentialities of the housing and urban development sector for accelerated national transformation.
The President said his administration's transformation agenda must touch all sectors, and in the housing sector, he said there should be no more impediments.
This is the mandate we have given the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company. Since the ability of banks to deliver mortgage services is limited by the fact that about 80% of all bank deposits are short-tenured. Of course, Peter Obi said that with the percentages, even 1% for entering the offices. We know that without government taking this initiative, as a nation, we cannot get to where we want to go.
He launches the company amidst applause. When fully operational, the National Mortgage Refinance Company will deliver over 75,000 homes per annum, generate over 300,000 jobs. There were testimonies from some of the beneficiaries of the loan already, and goodwill messages from governors and some members of the organized private sector. Highlight of the event was the signing of 2 agreements between the mortgage institutions and the ministries in charge to cement the bond. The government is optimistic that the National Mortgage Refinance Company will translate into the development of the country's economy and provide affordable housing and jobs for the teeming Nigerian youths. Chukwuma Onwekusi, Channels Television News.
Now, what might be happening to the big dreams of financing the housing sector as promised by the President? Well, joining me now on this is a Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Mortgage Refinance Company. Watch. Mr. Sonny Ayari, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
But let's begin with this very controversial issue, and of course what Nigerians are always eager to hear about, the housing deficit, which stands about 17 million. And of course, when the Mortgage Refinance Company was launched, expectations were high. And also, we're wondering, it might not be directly within your purview, but what plans do you have to sort this out exactly?
When you say sort it out, do you mean sort out housing or in terms of
We're talking about
deficit?
housing, the housing deficit.
Okay. Let me start. I mean, I think ever since I actually started working here, I've always heard of this housing deficit of 17 million. I'm sure it's probably higher than that now. Now, the thing is, the reason that deficit has continued to grow is because of the lack of monies going to that sector. And there were reasons for that. Number one, most bankers or most mortgage banks, even those who even had access to funding, would say that the asset, I mean, I remember sitting down with quite a few banks once and saying, why is it that the mortgage market isn't working here? And the most important answer that came back from most of the banks was because the asset class is too risky. When I lend money to an individual to acquire a house, in the event that that person can't pay, I can't get my money back. And that was the single most difficult issue that has actually plagued that market. And when we had the presidential retreat, where the coordinating minister of the economy was also a major part of it, the question was then, we went through all the facets of the issues, and what came up was that finance is the most important thing we need to deal with as number one, and that became the launch of the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company. Following that, we now have, when the company becomes operational, we'll have a company that should have consistent access to long-term monies through the capital markets and be able to provide those funds to commercial and mortgage banks. The idea is, at least for the first time in Nigeria, to make 20-year mortgages a standard. Right? Now, let me go back a second. Why is it that such long-term mortgages did not exist in the past? Principally because mortgage banks, whose primary business it is to provide mortgages, did not have access to funding. Okay? The commercial banks who had access to funding saw the asset class as too risky. You see? Now, in one breath, we've sorted out funding, but let me say we are still to de-risk the asset class. And by that I mean we have to be able to sort out issues of titling. We have to be able to sort out issues of foreclosure. Now, what do I mean by that? In terms of foreclosure, it's just a simple thing that if I lend money to, say for yourself, Gloria, to buy a house, to say the family. Now, God forbid something happens and you're not able to pay anymore. What is the probability that I can get my property back and sell it, so that way I can recoup my cost of funds? Okay. Now, if we're able to resolve that matter, you would find banks, both commercial and mortgage banks, a lot more comfortable with the credit risk of that sector, and even international investors would feel a lot more comfortable putting monies into buying bonds that are backed by Nigerian
So right now,
mortgages.
that's not happening.
No, that's not happening. Now, we believe it will happen. We have ideas on how that can happen, but I think if I don't jump the gun and just stick to that question of what are you doing to reduce that 17 million? I think the first thing we're doing is making sure that there is enough money to enter that sector, and I think what NMRC does is at least to plug that gap.
And so you're pumping enough money right now?
No. When NMRC becomes operational, we expect it to become operational sometime this year, end of second quarter-ish, around that sort of period. When it becomes operational, it would then work with certain commercial banks and mortgage banks who are investors in NMRC. And therefore, the institution then will be able